Welcome to the J-Cut podcast. My name's Mike Shantai, and on this podcast, I speak with creative people about their careers, their passions, and their lives. On the inaugural episode today, I sat down with my good friend Scott Law. We've known each other since high school. We were in drama classes together. We were in the high school plays together. And when we were in college, I was in college for film. He was in university for acting. We collaborated on a lot of projects. I cast him in things. And as we both started our careers, he migrated into voice acting primarily. So I ended up hiring him for corporate gigs. And we've been working together basically in some capacity since we were 15, 16 years old. So I decided to go easy on myself and work with someone I was comfortable with on this first episode, and sat down with him to discuss his career, what led him to switching from on camera and on stage acting to voice acting. Now he is the network voice for Showcase Television in Toronto. He's on a Nickelodeon animated show called Top Wing, and plays a couple characters on the anime series Bakugan Battle Planet. So we sat down to talk about his career, the audition process, what it's like being a professional voice actor. This is the first episode of the J-Cut podcast. If you are listening to this or watching this on the day of release, there are 2 other episodes available right now and more coming weekly, so make sure you check out the other ones for more insights from people working in other aspects of the creative media industry. Make sure you check back every week for more podcasts on this YouTube channel or wherever you get your audio podcasts. So without any further ado, let's hop into the first podcast, the first episode of the J-Cut with Scott Law. Let's rock and roll. You can take one ear off if you feel more comfortable that way.
We'll see. Oh, yeah, it is weird a little bit. Is it going to look weird on camera if I have one ear off?
No, that's fine. I'll just incorporate you asking that.
Does this look weird?
Do I look odd?
Ooh.
So, thanks for coming out and finally doing this. I asked you to do this months ago, and I finally pulled it off.
Finally pulled me in here for it.
You're a voiceover actor,
and
yes. I know this about you because because we've been friends for a long time.
Yeah.
That's kind of why I wanted to get you out here, because you are my friend and have been since high school.
You just say that for the cameras, man.
Yeah. No, we're friends, totally.
Yeah.
And
we are.
Yeah, and you're a professional voiceover actor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I make money speaking.
Yep.
I make money when I talk.
So how did you go from that? Because when we were in high school, we did the plays and drama class and all that, and you went to school to York University for acting. Mm-hmm. And I realized I don't actually know when you went from that to specifically voiceover only.
So theater school, after theater school, I was focusing mainly on camera and theater acting. And I think I was always interested in voiceover. Even at the time, I had one of those hippie vision boards, and I can remember I had this Post-it note on it that was look into voiceover work. And
look into.
Yeah. It's there's that Post-it note. And there's this old wives' tale too about voiceover work that's oh man, only 12 guys do voices in the cartoons, and if you want to book a role, you got to wait for one of them to die. And part of me probably believed there was some truth to that. Part of me was probably also a lazy 23-year-old looking at the mountain I had to climb, and I was ooh, I know how to do this theater thing. I know how to do the on-camera thing. And I was also working at Starbucks at the time, which sucked, but it had a drive-through in it. And within the span of probably 2 weeks, I had 4 or 5 random people pull up in the drive-through, and after I took their order, and they came up to the window and they're hey man, was that you doing the voice on the thing? And I'm yeah. They're oh, you should look into doing voiceover. And I'm oh, cool. Oh, thanks, man. I
use Starbucks to practice.
Yeah. I did have a lot of fun. I would prank some people in there. They pulled up to the window and be what the hell? But so I took that as a sign from the universe, whoa, this is so weird that all these people, and I come home and I got the Post-it note staring at me. And really hating your job at Starbucks is also a really good motivator to get your shit together and just actually okay, put in the work. And I think I just like decided that, all right, I was not really vibing with like on camera stuff either. Number one, I wasn't really like stoked on the stuff I was like getting put out for. It was mostly non-speaking commercials, smile for the camera, and like hand the Happy Meal out the window.
Taco Bell. Taco
I did
Bell
that,
one?
yeah. I mean, it's fun and like the paychecks are great, but it's like it's not what you imagined. You know, when you have a thing in your mind of, okay, that this is what a successful working actor looks like, and then when I was going out for those auditions, I'm like, this is not what I had envisioned. It was a little bit soul crushing, and like just the repetitive nature of film is like, it's a grind, man. I don't know how you like can do it. It takes a lot out of you, and like it's
Long
a lot
days.
of sitting and waiting for a setup, and the same thing over and over and over again. And so then I just was like full all in on VO, and I just started trying to absorb as much as I could. I was reading books and like watching YouTube videos. I was just trying to like, what's it like to book a job and be behind the microphone, and just try to absorb as much as I could.
Because I remember like, because we worked on a couple of things and mostly it was me asking you favors because I needed actors, and being indie filmmakers, we don't have access to a wide array of actors usually.
Yeah.
And I think I had like a corporate thing come up, and I asked you like, would you be interested in doing it? And you basically were just like, no. Like I was like, yeah, well, it's paid. And you're like, no, I'm not. I'm
Oh, the
not.
on camera thing.
Yeah, I don't remember what the project was, but I asked like if you'd be interested in that, and you were just like, no, I'm not doing. I think at that time you said you weren't doing anything on camera if you weren't like passionate about the project. Like if it was commercial or corporate, you were like, no, I'm not going to be on camera for that.
I think that's like, that was the starting point of me just coming to the realization of like, yeah, this really isn't what I'm into. And it was like, first, yeah, you know, if I'm really passionate about it, then I'm into it. And honestly, once I finally like did all the work to get an agent, and it was like the first few auditions I had, I was like, holy shit, this is like night and day. Going from non-speaking, smile, Happy Meal to auditioning for, not booking, but like at least auditioning for like lead roles and stuff. And like really cool stuff that I was like super passionate about. And like I've always been a cartoon nerd, anime nerd, and like it felt like it was waiting for me. And I finally was like, so many times in like the progression of you know, theater and acting and everything, there's so many steps where it felt like, oh, these are my people. You know, like when we did theater in high school and stuff, it was like, like these are my people.
The drama nerds.
Exactly.
Like hanging out in the drama class all the time.
And then you go to theater school for uni and you're like, oh, like these are even more my people. And then like, it's just one more step until I like found voiceover. And like, those are my people, man. Like, especially you go into the rooms, like for auditions and stuff. And the vibe is just, I find, even different than on camera. Like when you go for on camera audition, like everybody kind of looks like you and everybody's looking at each other. They're like, like I think I'm hotter than that guy or whatever, you know? And in voiceover, like you go in and people come out of the room like, hey man, like this is what they're looking for. I probably don't have it, but like this is the kind of read they said they wanted, and take it if you want it.
I've never actually thought of it like that, in that, because I've never auditioned as an actor, that, I mean, I know that you go into an audition space and you sit down like next to a few other people, and like you said, they all look like you because that's what the casting call asked for. But in voice work, you can pretty much look like anything, and if you can act that out, you could get the role. It doesn't matter what the character looks like. You could,
with the exception of like ethnic minorities now. Like now it's pretty like locked in of like if it's a Japanese person, like they're gonna cast a Japanese actor.
Should have a Japanese actor,
which rightfully so.
Yeah, fair enough. But I mean, even then, you could, specifically when you go to like kids, you could have females playing male young boys, like Nancy Cartwright,
and they do it better than guys.
Nancy Cartwright's been making millions for years playing a bunch of teenage or preteen boys. Yeah, that's kind of interesting because my auditions ended with the high school drama class. But what's so? I mean, what's the audition? I mean, you do auditions at home too.
Yeah.
So what are those like compared to like how often are you auditioning in a space for voice work?
Most of the time now, your initial audition is self-tape from home because like studio time is expensive, and usually they just first wave of casting is usually, not all the time. Sometimes you do get to go in, but most of the time it is like self-tape at home, and then your callback will be in studio. The difference is at home I could be like in my underwear, and sometimes I am like, I'm like, whew, this is a character, you're like really getting into it, you know, like I'm in my booth screaming, and then you're like, whew, my booth is not ventilated, so you could just do whatever you want, and you can have as many takes as you want. You can listen to it, you can edit it if you want, whereas in studio it's like, this is what it is.
You got someone watching you the whole time too.
Yep. But it also is like, I do find that I prefer to go into the room, as much as it is nice to like listen back and edit and take your time and really like flesh out a character for the self-tape at home. When you go into the space, like what happens if you do a self-tape and it's so off of what they were thinking for the character? And so they listen to 2 seconds and they're like, next. Whereas if you're in the room, they go, oh, okay, whoa, no. Like, actually, we're thinking the character was more like this. And you can have that adjustment.
Yeah, they can't just next you out of the room.
Yeah. They could.
They can't. They're a little
That'd be a little bit of a dick move. The other thing also is that you can, like, work a little bit of charm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, people like to work with people that are cool to work with. So, you know, a self-tape, you can't really tell if that voice is great, but you get them in the studio and you're like, this guy's a dick.
Yeah.
But if you're in the audition, in the space, you can show them like you're a fun guy, you're easy to work with, and like you're there to have a fun time.
And that's usually, at least for me, key is being easy to work with and like just positive. Like you are the network voice for Showcase Television in Toronto, which is nationwide.
Yeah.
So what led to that? Because I just remember like we were hanging out one night and you're like, yo, I just booked Showcase. Like I'm the network voice now. Like how does that happen? And then what are those sessions like?
Booking the gig, I think it was a little bit of luck. I had just signed on. Well, not just. I was probably like within 6 months of signing on with my agency. Mm-hmm. And my agent's assistant at the time, I believe his wife was actually really good friends with one of the big directors at Chorus, actually what the time was Shaw.
Yeah.
But they were looking to rebrand Showcase, and the lady that was doing it before me, she was like the voice of Showcase for like 18 years. Mm-hmm. And so by no fault of hers, they just were like, we're rebranding. Mm-hmm. And I think they sent out an email like, hey, looking for names you'd recommend for this job. And I think I was just super fortunate to have my agent's assistant put my name at the top of the list, and came out, did the audition, and then I remember leaving and being like, oh, I screwed that up. And then on the way home, I actually found a $10 bill on the ground, and I'm like, ooh, baby. And I'm like, I shit the bed on that audition, but like $10. And then I think like the next day I found out I had a call back and was like, ooh, that $10 was a sign. And then I get to the callback and I like go to the lobby or the reception of Shaw, and I'm like, hey, I'm here for the Showcase network voice callback. And the reception lady's like, huh? And I'm like, there's no one else here for this? And she's like, no. And I'm like, oh, if I didn't feel like there was pressure, I was like, oh my God, like, don't fuck this up.
Now there's pressure.
Yeah, now there was pressure, but also liberating, and like the fact that like, oh my God, I don't think anyone else is here. Mm. So like, as long as I don't screw this up, like I think I might have this. Mm. And so then I eventually did book it, and what the sessions are like, it's just really chill now. Mm. It's the same.
How many years are you now into this? Three or four? Yeah,
I think like 3.5, 4 years I've been doing that gig.
So you booked it at 25 years oldish, mm-hmm. which is, I mean, a pretty sweet ongoing gig for a 25-year-old starting voice actor. Like, I mean, starting.
Yeah, I mean, I was probably like 6 to 8 months into doing it. Mm-hmm. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, what the hell? And I remember being a little bit apprehensive too, because when my agent called me to tell me about it, he was like, so it's a non-union gig, and he's like, I know you're gaining a lot of traction with animation, which all that is union. And he's like, so it's kind of gonna, put a restriction on that. And so I remember having some feelings of like, oh, that kind of sucks. But then kind of shook my head a little bit. I was like, what are you thinking, dude? This is so sick.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah. Take the opportunity while it's.
Yeah.
Well, that's similar to me. Like when I first got a call to go work at Sportsnet, was like literally this was a 10 o'clock at night. I got a phone call from someone I knew who was working there and said like, can you be here tomorrow? And like, we need somebody. She had called like 2 or 3 other people.
Where did she get your name?
Like she was from my college. Like she was
okay.
But she called a few people she knew and they were busy. And then she called one of our old professors and he said to call me. And so I got this call at like 10 o'clock at night and it's like, can you be here tomorrow morning? And like, I almost said no because I was like, I don't know enough about sports. Like, what the hell am I getting myself into?
Yeah, that's true.
And I had that like nervous sort of hesitancy about taking on something that I've never done before. And then luckily I said like, okay, what's the worst that could happen? I go in,
they grill you about sports
and I suck. Like, I make, I get paid for the day and I never get called back again, but you never know what sort of opportunity that could lead to. Cause with Showcase too, like it comes down to getting a lucky break that you may not know is that lucky break at the time and just taking the opportunity and running with it.
Yeah.
Regardless, like basically fuck the consequences at this point. I might as well take a shot at it. And like,
I remember when you told me about the Sportsnet thing, I'm like, what the hell? Like, this guy's not a sports guy. Mike is not sports Mike.
Still not really sports Mike.
Hey, but like, you watched the playoffs this season.
I did. I watched the playoffs. I was just as disappointed with everybody as everybody else.
Do not get me started.
Yeah,
we're on a good emotional train here, Mike. Don't ruin this.
All right. We'll leave the Leafs out of this for now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, so you get this Showcase gig, and is that like, had you done any other paid work besides the one client I hooked you up with?
Yeah, I think at the time I had done at least like a bunch of like non-union animation pilots.
Okay.
And
what's the pay like that on an animation pilot? Like,
not good. Not good. I mean, they're a lot of fun, and like they really did prepare me a lot for when I did make the jump to union and doing, the bigger cartoons. But most of the time they want you to do a bunch of voices, especially because it's a pilot. They're not trying to spend that much money. I think it was probably like $200 for a session. Yeah, for a session. Yeah. And who knows how long it was. Like, book you for 4 hours and however long it took to get it done. Mm-hmm. I did a few of those. And that's the other good thing about being a voice actor is like, if you do something that's kind of shitty, it's not like an on-camera thing where you're like, a bad movie can ruin your career. Yeah. Like, you're done, potentially. And like, I guess that could happen with voiceover, but like, you have the ability to change so many things about your voice and your delivery. And like, that's something that I also am like, hey, bye-bye on camera.
Less consistent reputation from one project to another. Is that like a bit of a challenge too, though? Because when you look at a lot of like cast lists for TV shows and video games and stuff where there's a lot of like voice talent, it's a lot of the same names because you can play 10 different characters. Right. Like, you know what I mean? Like how many, what's his name from like Uncharted?
Nolan
North and Troy Baker. They're in like everything because it's just their voice.
Well, and they're also super fucking talented.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm not saying.
Yeah. Like, I watch them do their thing and I'm like, son of a bitch. Yeah. Wow, that is good. But to go to your point about hiring the same people to do a lot of the voices, like from a money perspective, they do save. Mm-hmm. I think the rates, the union rates are usually, if you go in for a character and they have you do a second character, I think you get half.
Okay.
So like 1.5 times. So instead of paying, 2 actors, like 2 full rates,
1.5.
You save half a rate. So it makes sense. And like, who doesn't want to do another role in the show? And they're like, hey, can you do this? I mean, I've had a lot of opportunities and where they're like, hey, like, can you do another voice for this? And then they don't end up using it. And you're like, damn it, I was so close. Like, well, get him next time.
Yeah. Well, that's just what I was wondering, because it feels like it's even more competitive than on camera, because when it comes to on camera, you can play a ton of different roles, but you can only do like that one, right? So it's like we got 15 characters we need voiced, but we're only hiring 7 people if we can get away with that. You know what I mean? Like which is great for the actors that get cast, but is that like a hard thing to deal with, or is it just something you don't think about and you just audition and say, fuck it?
I haven't thought about it since what I was talking about earlier of like that wives' tale of like, oh, it's the same 12 people that do this, right? And I personally haven't thought about it because in the industry, man, it is like film. Like you can like, oh, it's that guy again. And I think a lot of studios, like, you know, once you've been in enough stuff, I think people are kind of like, okay, either this guy's got to change it up, or we're going to find some new talent. And there's always room for new talent. Yeah. Like, I don't ever think of, oh, man, like, it's always the same people that get it, you know? And I can say that from a place of probably, like, comfort and, like, very fortunate to have landed the stuff that I have. But who doesn't want more? Yeah. Right? So, I don't know. I never ever, like, stress about it. Like, oh, man, this guy got it again. Nah. You just work harder on the next audition.
And how many auditions do you do like a week?
That is a number that is all over the place, man. Like
ballpark it, like average.
Average, I would say you probably on a good month you're getting like 1 to 3 a week. Okay. And then there's some weeks where you don't have any. And those are the weeks you're like, oh God, it's all over. Yeah. It's done. And then there's weeks that there's like 5 auditions. And you're like, oh, geez, like, can you cool it on the auditions?
I got other stuff to do.
Like, wow.
What's the, not failure rate, but what's the booking percentage then? If you're doing like 3 to 5 a week, let's say high end 5, that's roughly 20 a month.
The failure rate is probably like 95% failure. So that does take its toll. Certain times you're like, after you go, how many auditions? 95 auditions where you don't book, and you're just like, what the hell is going on? And then you finally do book, and it like completely resets that meter, and then you're just like, woo!
Gets you excited again. Yeah.
And you totally forget that you just failed 95 times. It makes it all worth it.
So I mean, it's about persevering through that, because I know like the problem a lot of people have is they try something and it doesn't work out, so they assume they're not good enough and they give up immediately. Yep. So like, what got you through that initially?
I'm still going through it, man. I'm still going through it. Like, you eventually you have little successes, man. You got to use those to motivate yourself to continue to push. And also you got to just believe in yourself. It's just like cheesy, but like, if you're not believing in yourself, like, why would a casting director believe in you? Like, if you're going into the audition with the vibe of like, oh, I'm not very good at this, then like it's going to vibe off and they're going to be like, okay, like, thanks for this one, Scott. Next, Then
they next you out of the studio.
Yeah. And that's happened too.
Yeah.
But the biggest failures and the shittiest auditions are the ones that I've had like the biggest growth from. You know, an audition where you absolutely walk out of there being like, oh my God, what was I doing? And then you can go through and you analyze, like, what were you doing? Why did it end up so shitty? And then you make your adjustments. So like, okay, I definitely know not to do that again. And like, that's the shit that, pushes you forward, because it's like a constant growing. Like if I listen back to stuff, like self-tapes I recorded at home that I still have access to, like from 2 years ago.
Or the first projects that I ever got hired onto.
I don't even want to listen to those. But like, it's stuff like that where you listen to it and you go, okay, like on the day-to-day basis, it doesn't ever feel like you're improving very much. Like day to day, you're like, oh, it's the same old thing. But you go back and you listen to some of the shit you did before and you're like, oh, like, okay, I guess I am learning a lot as I'm going along. So that's what kind of motivates you, and booking stuff helps a lot.
So your failure rate's like 95%. And then like what out of those, what sort of things do you actually audition for? Like, are you consistently auditioning for cartoons and animated, or are you doing corporate stuff and commercials? Is it just whatever kind of comes your way? Or
so, well, that's a lot of questions there, but I would say a lot of the time your agent is going to send you out initially for everything, and they do get feedback from the directors and casting directors, because either they're asking for it, especially if they've just taken you on, or the directors, if they've liked what you did, then they'll be like, hey, just want to let you know, like, this guy crushed it today. He's not getting the role, but he was in the top 5. So just so you know, as an agent, don't chop him from your roster. So I've been with him for 5 years now. And I do feel that he probably sees me more of like an animation cartoon specialist at this point. So most of the stuff I do go out for now is animation, which I am fine with, because that's where I want to be. Yeah. Commercial stuff is awesome. It's a lot of fun, and the money is very nice.
Tight.
The commercial money is filthy, but it's also like not as rewarding. Like, it's doing a commercial, it's like here, it's gone. Whereas you do an animated thing and it's there forever. Like, you can look that up and there's the video footage, and like, I mean, we were talking before and I told you, like, I have a toy of my character on the show I'm on now. Like, that is the craziest thing ever. Like, what the hell? Like, seeing that in the store, like, just mind blowing. And since I've gone union, I'm not really it's not possible for me to do corporate stuff anymore. Right, like, I would recommend anybody who's in voiceover or wants to get into it, like, stay non-union as long as you can, because you can make money doing anything with your voice. Once you make that jump to union, like, you are pretty much limited to what agents are getting for you. And like, we just talked about how, like, a week goes by and you don't get an audition and you're like, what the hell is going on here? Whereas if you are non-union, you can just be like, okay, he's not getting me audition. Like, time for me to, hit the phones, start cold calling. You can there's so many avenues for you to just grind.
Or you can just get that, like, call from somebody who knows you from a previous thing. It's like, hey, I need something from you for this.
Yeah. Whereas that's not really, I mean, that is possible to get the call, but it'll cost them a lot more money. But I think that was all your questions.
Yeah. Well, like, so you've got an agent and you've been with them for 5 years or so. You have to start without an agent. Like, how does one go from no agent to agent? Because then at that point, you're still, when you have an agent, you're still sort of an independent contractor. You're like, very much you don't have a job, and and
sorry, Mom,
your agent just takes a cut of whatever you book. Yeah. So when someone doesn't have an agent, like, what's their sort of best avenue, especially in the voice acting realm?
Well, I would say that you want to get an agent as soon as possible.
Okay.
Like, you can do voice acting without an agent. Sure. Like, there's avenues you can go to, like, pay to play websites where you pay a fee to have access to their auditions. And then, like, basically it's still kind of an agent, except you're paying for them to get you the auditions. And then it's up to you to respond and record. And so it is possible, but you really do just want to get an agent ASAP, because not only you want to have somebody that's, gonna try to build your resume with, big name stuff. And you can do it for sure without one. And it's just gonna require you making a lot more phone calls, grinding a lot harder, which you should when you're starting out anyway, even with an agent.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't have all the skills yet, then maybe hold off until you've taken a whole bunch of workshops and, you've done your homework. And then, because you don't want to go out for, auditioning for agents or submitting your packages and your materials to them, and it's not your best stuff.
Yeah.
And then you kind of have to wait for them to forget who you are. Like, oh, this guy just submitted to me like 3 months ago. Oh, when I took a workshop. Like, I'll wait another 6 months.
Yeah.
So, like,
I mean, doing a lot of commercial stuff, I work with a couple, like, recurring voice actors that are either doing stuff for that specific network or a brand. like there's one voice actress that I've been working with a lot lately for a specific small company. So she's staying non-union because she's just doing the commercial stuff. So you were saying like you want to get an agent as early as possible, but is that sort of like if you want to get into more of the consistent cartoon or TV show type stuff? Is that
not necessarily, like to some degree, but you know, there are non-union agencies.
Okay.
Like there's agencies out there that explicitly represent non-union talent, and that's all fine. Like you just if your goal is to go union, then yeah, you probably want to sign non-union with somebody who it is their goal also to get you to be a union. Or if you want to stay non-union, then you might as well just join non-union agency and grind it out there.
That. Yeah. So now, how did that go from? Because the showcase thing was non-union, and then you got hired for Top Wing.
Yeah.
So, which was a union gig, or at least it became a union gig.
It was a union gig, and I was just paying crazy amounts of my paycheck for permits to do the gig.
To do like the showcase stuff?
No, to stay non-union, you have to pay for a permit to do a union job.
Okay.
And they had like just come out with a new ruling that was like after your sixth permit, it was like they were taking almost more than half of my Top Wing paycheck.
Yeah.
And it was just like, this is ridiculous. Like, and my agent was also thinking, this is ridiculous.
Not super stoked on that.
Your character is clearly here to stay. You're going to be here in a lot of episodes. So we got to get you to join union. But we were both, you know, on the same page of like, well, we also don't want to lose the showcase gig.
Yeah, it's consistent work. Like, it negates any need for you to get another job. That's why you quit Starbucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what ended up, can you talk about that in terms of
it's straight up all big ups to my agent.
Oh, okay.
He initially like found some backdoor loophole and proposed it to the people at Chorus, and they were like, "Oh, so you did. Actually, screw it. You found the loophole. Let's just do it on the books."
Okay.
So then my agent basically negotiated it, and the rates stayed the same except for ACTRA gets a little piece. So I actually I get a little bit less than I used to now that I'm union with a showcase gig.
Okay.
But some of that also goes towards your union dues and like stuff like automatic RSPs and like health insurance.
Well, that's
benefits.
what I was going to say. You because you're not giving half your paycheck from Top Wing up to permits anymore. So even though your take home on showcase is a little bit lower, perhaps it's still a higher net across the board than it was before this sort of deal was worked out, right?
Although just having done my taxes, I'm like, oh man, all those crazy permits were a great expense for my company. Oh man.
So you got to deduct all of
Oh
those.
yeah, it was all deductible, right? It's all an
course.
expense, like union dues and whatever. And so this year I'm like, oh my God, I owe that much? Like, wow.
That's the self-employed life where we don't get tax returns. We pay taxes.
Yeah.
And we're not
a large amount.
We're not smart enough to avoid them completely yet.
Yeah. I got to talk to some guys in the bank industry.
How
do you do it?
How do you get away with no taxes?
Yeah.
Incorporate. But I don't know how that would work with your I don't know how that would work with like
not smart enough for that.
ACTRA rates and union dues and stuff. I don't know how incorporating companies works with that. So I'm not going to get too into that. How did you get Top Wing? Was that just a random audition that led to somewhere?
Yeah, crazy enough. This is
so what is Top Wing first? Like
Top Wing is like an animated preschool show. It's 3D animated. It's about a flock of birds that go around saving people on this island. I don't know if you ever the show that basically is kind of the model for it is Paw Patrol.
I was gonna say it's the same production company as Paw Patrol, right?
Yeah, it's the same.
And everybody who has a child or who knows a child knows Paw Patrol nowadays. So
so it's the same thing but with birds.
Okay. So
yeah, that show I auditioned for initially this pirate character and other character, and I thought I was like, man, I crushed those auditions. I'm like, I'm booking that for sure.
So the opposite of your showcase mentality.
Yeah, the opposite. That's another story. Like, you always book the shit you thought you did bad on, and the stuff you thought you crushed. You're like, phone's dead.
Yeah.
But so I thought I crushed it and nothing. But then, like, maybe 2 months later, I get a call being like, hey, they really, really loved your auditions for that. Somebody was just better. But we want to cast you for this other role. And we've never heard you do this character before. And so they're like, it's a turkey mayor, or like Commodore Smirk-Turksky. And I'm like, ooh, I got something for you, because it's so crazy how this shit like comes full circle in your life. When I was a kid, my uncle was like on vacation, and he was like somewhere tropical, and my cousins were talking to him on the phone, and in the background of the phone call, all they could hear was like turkeys gobbling, and like it was just and so it just became this thing that like at family reunions with this family on my dad's side, it would be like everybody's just gobbling. And so like I remember in elementary school, it just like we were playing volleyball in gym class, and I'd spike it and I'd be like and then like so I get this this booking, this paper casting for this turkey, and I'm like, okay, they liked me enough for these other roles that they're just giving this to me.
Yeah.
Sick. But I'm like, they have no idea what's coming. And I just remember going into that, and I'm like so stoked to just drop this gobble. And when I did, they just like all died. And
because, dude, I'm fairly certain I remember you doing that gobble even in high school sometimes.
I probably did. I probably did.
So
did a lot of weird noises in high school.
Well, we were drama kids, so that's what happened. So you drop this gobble on them, because you were only supposed to be, at least like at that point, booked for one episode, right?
Yeah, I didn't know what exactly the plan was. I know for sure I was not what the creative director wanted for the role. He heard the initial when I came in for it, and then my agent calls me and he's like, yeah, actually, you're cut. I'm like, oh my God, really? And that sucks. I'm like, I thought I crushed it.
Yeah.
What the hell? And so then they end up like auditioning the whole city, because I think they my agent calls me, and he's like, yeah, so you never guessed, but they're putting out a new casting, and they want him to sound like Don Cherry. Like, right. What? Okay. So they audition the whole city, and then another 2 weeks or so goes by, and I get another call from my agent. He's like, I pick up the phone, and he's laughing. And I'm like, this is very weird. I don't know if I ever got a call from my agent laughing before. And he's like, they want you back. They audition the whole city, and nobody could gobble like you. But I also owe a big thanks to the voice director and casting director of Top Wing, because she was the one that was like, she fought for me. She was like, okay, he wanted the creative director of Top Wing initially wanted Commodore Smirk-Turksky to just be like a mild-mannered Southern gentleman. Mm-hmm. And what I was bringing was like a hysteric, crazy turkey that needed over the top, super ham, needed to be rescued and shit. And that ended up being why my character kept getting brought back for more episodes, because they're like, it was so easy to be like, let's get the turkey involved with some crazy antics. He needs some saving because he's so crazy. He's like lost at sea, and then we need to go save him or whatever. And I'd just be there.
Save the Commodore.
I'd be there in the middle of the ocean, like, and it's crazy how stuff like works out like that.
So okay, because I didn't know that. I didn't know that you went in, did that episode, and they liked it, and then cut you.
Yeah.
Because I remember, I don't know, maybe you did that, and then because I don't know how long all this takes. Because I just remember you saying that you booked that, and I don't know if that was.
I probably told people that I booked it, and then I found out that I
was cut,
and it was devastating, man. How do you like tell people? And they're like, oh, like how's that turkey gig going? And you're like, what turkey gig? Yeah. Like, you told me the last time. I don't know what you're talking about. I never told you about a turkey gig.
What are you talking about?
Like, I'm pretty sure you told me about it. No, nope. You're crazy. So that was just fortunate. And so I got to just avoid that whole awkward, like, I lost the gig.
Mm-hmm. But that's also just what happens sometimes. Like it's talent gets cut like that all the time.
And it also just goes to show that a lot of the time they don't know what they want until they hear it.
Yeah.
Like he had it in his mind that this is what he wanted because he's the one who created the character or whatever. And he had the vision for it. And initially you get that like, oh no, that's not what I had in mind. And then you finally, I remember at like the season 1 wrap party, I was talking to the creative director and he was like, came up to me. He's like, I have to tell you, I hated you at first. And I'm like, oh, sick. Nice to meet you too. And he's like, and then I saw the first piece of animation with your voice over it. And then I realized I was completely wrong. And so I was like, hey.
Well, that's super cool, man. That's speaking as someone who's directed things before. You go into it with a certain mindset of how you want a character to look and act and feel, and almost no actor is ever going to give you exactly that because you create a character or you interpret it on the script or whatever, and sometimes it's tough to remove yourself enough to be like, I was wrong. Like this is what they brought is way better.
Yeah.
Have you wrapped up Top Wing or you just did another session for it? And
season 2 is coming soon.
Yeah.
Season 1 is wrapped, fully aired, and they've already announced, so I'm allowed to say it. Season 2 is it's in the works, being animated, and I don't know when that's coming out. I don't know how long it takes to animate these things. A long time, I would assume.
I was gonna say you got cast in this 2016 or so. And now the first season's aired, but because they do the voice work first and then actually animate afterwards because it's going to be easier to animate the like lip flap for the characters to the voiceover
and
than
it's freedom as an actor. You can just do whatever you want and then they animate to it, and you want to give them as much creative stuff with your voice so that you give the animator something because they probably have an idea in their mind of like, they see the storyboard and they're like, okay, this is how I'm going to animate. And then you throw in some, crazy gobbles or like, you're out of breath on a line they didn't expect you to be, or, you play an emotion that is completely different from what the script, if you were reading it on paper, what you'd think. And then to the animators, they're going like, oh, like this is sick. Wow. Okay. You went there.
So what's the session like though, when you go in? Cause I think back to, like Batman, the animated series in the 90s, they did that show with everybody in the same fucking room. Like they all were sitting together and they did the full episode, read it like a stage play, which does not really happen. At least not
very
nowadays.
Rarely. It's just a logistical nightmare to try to get how many talent in the same room at the same time. Like that's, everybody's got the schedules and shit, but most of the time, you're in there alone. You go, you get your call time, you go and you read, and depends on how many lines you have in the episode, but like most of the time you're done within like 45 minutes. And we did for Top Wing, there are a few times I was recorded in an ensemble, which is so much more fun, man. Like you just vibe off the other people's energy, and there's people, it's the same thing. People are delivering lines. You've read the script a million times already, and people deliver it in a way that you're like, you try not to laugh for the mics to pick you up. And like, it elevates everybody's performance. Most people, I'm sure there's people that find it intimidating, but.
But is that tough though, to act and deliver these lines with no one else to bounce off of? Or like, do you just like read through the lines a bunch of different ways, basically like one by one through the script, so the animators can, or the director can pick what they like? Or
I would say maybe at first it was like a little bit difficult coming from a theater background and like on camera work where you're with another actor in a room doing a scene and you're very much reacting rather than acting. And now it's like, it'd be like weird to have a scene with somebody else. It's like, whoa, okay. The times that I've done ensemble now, it's like you really have to, shake your head and be like, okay, no, I have to go back to my theater school training and like now I'm reacting to what they're saying, or like I still have what I wanted to do with the line, but I also have to be like very cognizant of what you're doing with your line.
Do you do you just like you have your one line? Are you just doing like numerous types of reads for it, and then
You come in with what you think is right for it.
Yeah.
You read it once, and then the director is going to tell you, like, it's so sweet when you hear like, oh my God, perfect. Yeah. And you're like, hey.
Nice.
And then a lot of the time they're like, great, let's tweak this little thing. Some of the stuff you do give a little bit of a library to work from, but most of the time it's like the director's calling the line that's going to end up in the show there on the spot of like, even if you do right there read like, okay, Scott, give me 3 takes of this line, 3 different ABC, and you do them, and then you'll hear her like whisper to the production coordinator like, okay, B's the best,
Because I mean I've done ADR stuff with actors, but I've never directed that sort of animation, so it's very different. I don't know what goes on there. It's a whole other.
It's a mystery.
It's a whole other world of production work that I think I'd have fun with it, but I also feel like
I would love to get on the other side of the glass. Yeah,
that would be cool. Like, but for me, I mean, like the reason I don't do a lot of VFX work and stuff, and when I'm in post production, I stay to editing, is because I can make things happen instantaneously. And I feel like animation is such a slow burn. It takes forever.
Oh my God.
That like I would like lose interest, or I'd be done with it long before I was done with it.
Yeah. See, I don't even know if the directors have much. The creative director, like the guy who was like, I initially hated you, but now I love you. He's the guy who's going to see it through from beginning to end, but he's not most of the time. He comes to some sessions, or he or she, whatever. But most of the time, like the voice director who's there, they're probably not seeing the project all the way through to like, this is how it matches,
Well, it's like a TV show where like the directors are hired guns. They're there for that episode or whatever, that block.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's the executive producers who are they get the approvals over everything, and they give the thumbs up from beginning to end. So you mentioned when you made a joke about you don't have a job, and you said, sorry, Mom. What were your parents like when you not necessarily going into voice acting, but wanted to go into acting?
I can only say like I'm super fortunate that I had parents that were, super supportive. I decided I was going to be an actor in like high school.
Yeah.
Like my parents as a kid, they put me in like drama camp, like all through elementary school in the summers and stuff.
Camp.
Hell yeah. We worked at a drama camp. Yeah. How many years? Like
I did
5 years.
I did 3. I think you did 4 or 5.
4, and then I think I did extra time like afterwards doing those like night programs.
Yeah, but I didn't do those ones.
So anyway, they were super supportive, man. Like they were putting me in those drama camp things in elementary, and then in high school, I started taking classes downtown, like workshops and stuff for improv and on camera. And they were like stoked. They're like, yeah, do it.
Do you think they were nervous though?
Oh, I'm sure. How could you not
voice that? Like, did
they ever voice it? I know my mom, like she definitely gave me books of like how to market yourself as an actor, how to turn your acting into a business.
Yeah.
And which I really appreciate, because like they were practical of like, okay, this is what you want to do. And if you're going to do it, you need to also look at it from a business standpoint as well as creative, which is super important. Anybody who's doing this, like,
needs to learn some business.
If you're going to do this, you got to have the creative juice, but you also have to be willing to put in a little bit of time to learn how to work your own business.
Yeah.
Like,
well, it's to survive in any sort of creative, like, especially if you want to be self-employed or an actor, or it's all about learning and having that business acumen. And if you don't have it, you have to learn it. And all the resources are out there. Like I Googled everything on how to run a business, and that's what I still do on a regular basis.
If I have a question for anything, Google. Yeah.
Google
like,
or YouTube. YouTube
what is this?
Tutorials.
Yeah, exactly. Like I could do anything now. I feel like just if I watched enough YouTube videos, that'll show me how to do it.
And then being self-employed, you've got auditions that come in, because I mean we've done like where we're getting together. You're like, oh, I got to do this audition or whatever before I can go out or what. What's like the work-life balance for you as a professional working voiceover actor? Like, do you have more free time than you would if you had a real job? And
Yeah.
like,
But your free time can quickly, a day that you thought you were like, oh, sick. Like, I'm just going to have a day to just like play some video games in my underwear.
yeah.
And you like set up for that. And then you get an email from your agent being like, we need to have these 10 characters done by 4 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can't really ever make plans during business hours, especially.
Yeah.
Because you could get an audition at any moment,
Mm-hmm.
which is why actors need jobs that are super flexible.
Yeah.
Like you imagine you're working some job that you don't give a shit about, and you get an audition that comes in and you're like, wow, this is a really cool project. And I mean, if I still had to work a Joe job, I would probably have the worst reputation in like the Joe job histories because I'd be like, later, like you guys, you're probably screwed, but like, I'm sorry, but my
fired repeatedly.
Yeah, like, it says here you worked at this place. No.
Why did I put that on my resume?
Don't call them for a reference.
Is that a challenge though? Because like, I mean, that's the problem I have a lot is that I feel like I'm always working, and when I'm not working, I'm thinking about work, if I'm not working, I'm stressing that I don't have work happening right now.
Well, yeah, that for the last one for me is probably the biggest of like, I can still like relax if I'm not, working on anything, but a week when you don't have an audition that comes in is stressful, man. It's like you're freaking out.
Mm-hmm. And you have you have the showcase ongoing contract, which is good. Like as a working voice actor,
right?
I'm sure is a huge, yeah, exactly. Sigh of relief that at least like if you don't book anything else for the next 2 months, you've at least got a paycheck that comes in for however long. But there's a lot of points where, and I go through the same thing. I don't know when my next paycheck's coming in. I don't know how I'm going to get it. I don't know where it's going to come from. And it could like, I could get a call at 2 p.m. and be like, all right, I'm booked tomorrow now. And now I'm good for the next little bit because I'm going to make some money. How stressful is that for you?
I mean, you said I had a showcase thing. So that in itself removes like a lot of stress. Yeah. Knowing that I can pay my rent and put food on the table every month is a huge relief. But yeah, man, everybody wants more money. Yeah. Everybody wants more success in their business. So yeah, anytime you're not booking or you haven't had a booking in a long time, it's not a good feeling. And so I don't know how I handle it. I just keep grinding, man. Like the next audition that does come in, if you don't have one for a week, like you can best believe I'm going to be working my ass off on it, making sure, especially if it's a self-tape, like I'll spend like forever on self-tapes, probably longer than, I bet you agents and directors would probably be like, no, man, like you should know what the read is going to be. Just do it and send it.
Yeah.
But I'm like, hell no, I got a booth at home and I have the ability to do this as many times as I want, listen back to it as many times as I want, and be like, in that take, I slightly popped that P, or like, I was a little bit too breathy on that. And like, I'm going to redo it. Mm-hmm. I still make sure it like all sounds like super flowy, it's not like chopped up or anything.
But how long do you spend on self-tape, like on average?
I mean, you try to keep it. It depends. If it's a commercial read, you try to keep it under like 45 minutes, even a half hour. Especially for commercial reads, I would say that's probably an area where there's not too many ways you're going to read this.
Yeah.
You know how you're going to read it. You try reading it a couple ways. You always have to send in at least 2 takes. You want them to be different. And so you figure out what your 2 takes are. And funny enough, a lot of the time, I'll like put down my first take and I'm like, yeah, that's the one. Hey, and I'm like, okay, now I got to do a friggin' other. That's the worst part of it. And you're like, this is the take.
That's the one I want to use.
This is the one. This is the one. I got to do another one. What for? This is the one. And then you're like, you do this other take with not even really thinking about it. And then after you listen to them both back, you're like, actually, that second take, I'm gonna put that one at the front.
Second guess yourself.
Yeah.
So then an animated show or something, how long would you spend on that?
Well, it depends on how many characters you get a breakdown for.
Okay.
Also, it's going to depend on what kind of source material or references they give you. A lot of the time, they'll be like, okay, here's celebrity reference or YouTube clip of like, this is the vibe we want.
Okay.
Then you get your character breakdown. I see in a lot of these like I know that voice documentary and stuff. A lot of the time, all the big guys are talking about like, well, you see the picture and that's going to tell you everything. I'm like, bullshit. You never get pictures anymore. Like very, very rarely do I ever get a picture of what the character looks like.
Well, because they're probably not fully designed yet, or there's like sketches
or it's like NDA'd to crap where they don't want to release any of the content.
Yeah. Especially like, I mean, if you get a big time actor like the guy's doing Futurama. What's the lead guy of Wally West? Billy West, right. Billy West can probably get sent whatever he wants to give this read what it needs. Yeah. But like you're Scott Law, who is like, just that.
He's grinding
you're
it out.
Working it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, you could get that character and get that image and whatnot if you've got the reputation to uphold it because you're Billy West, or you are Dan Castaneletta. Is that how
Castaneletto?
Homer Simpson.
I can't remember if it's O or
I think
Homer.
It's Castaneletta.
Yeah.
Yeah, or Nancy Cartwright or whatever. I mean, they're just doing the Simpsons.
But also, I think there is a lot to be said about just going for it. And if you you didn't get it in the breakdown, I think you also, as an actor, you have to do whatever you have to do to succeed.
Yeah.
And if that takes you sending an email being like, hey, to your agent, can you see if you can get me a photo of the character? Or, hey, can you ask the director, I have this question about the breakdown. I'm a little confused about this. Can you get me some clarification? And just do it. If you think to yourself, I should probably do that, you should do it.
Yeah.
I've had auditions where I had a callback for this awesome new cartoon that was coming out. Callback is always feels way more pressure filled than your initial audition because you're like, holy shit, I actually have a chance of booking this. It's down to me and whatever, you and 10 people. And I went in there and the director, funny enough, as we were just saying before, do you ever read the lines with somebody? The director tells me, oh, I'm going to read the other character's lines for so you have somebody to play off. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, cool. And so we start and she's skipping lines, but not in a pattern that I can follow. It's not like, oh, I'm just going to read the cue line.
Okay.
And so she wasn't doing that. It was just reading lines, and I don't know if she was doing it on purpose or just
trying to trip you up.
Probably not. She was probably just missing them. But
I was gonna say, is she just deadpanning them too?
Yeah, she was. But it was completely throwing me off. And that was an audition where I left being like, oh, god dang, what the hell, man? I screwed that up so bad. But I felt mostly what the hell? Why was she doing that? It completely took me out of the character because now I'm trying to see where she is on the page. Mm-hmm. And then I remember telling this story to another actor who's on Bakugan with me. And he was like, what the hell, man? You should have just told her, hey, can I read this without you reading the lines?
Yeah.
And it just was wow, I didn't even think of that as a possibility because you just assume that the director's word is law.
Yeah.
And
but part of that too is when you're in the moment, she's doing this thing, she's reading these scripts all weird. You might be getting flustered, but it might just not cross your mind to be like, hey, can I just try this without you? Just because you're the odd one out in that scenario anyway, because it's basically your job audition.
Yeah.
So, or your job interview rather. But okay, so Bakugan, you are an anime fan and have been for a long time.
Yep.
So how did you land this one too?
This one doesn't really have a crazy story. It was I remember getting the audition in my email and I'm just freaking out because animes never come to Toronto. Mm-hmm. The most successful anime that came out of Toronto was Sailor Moon, which is pretty big. But they generally, the most of them are done in Dallas, some in Vancouver. They used to. I don't even know if that happens anymore. But I was just oh my God, if I don't book something on this, I'm going to die. And there was so many roles to audition for, so I read for all of them, self-tape for all of them, and
I can picture these are the characters you're casting for, and it's your agent sends you 3 or 4, and you're like, no, I want the whole list.
So I see the breakdown says a lot more character names here. Can you send me those sides as well?
Send me all of them, please.
Yeah. So funny enough, actually, the main character that I'm like on the credits for the show is the one that when I was doing it, I was like, ooh,
this would be cool.
This one I think has the best chance of getting it.
Yeah.
So this was an instance where it was like, your gut feeling was right. And then whatever, you get the call back. And oh my God, actually, this does have a funny story. At the call back, I'm going in, the director comes out, calls me into the room, and we're walking towards the booth together. She's kind of in front of me, not looking at me, but we're just talking. And I got my scripts in my one hand and my glass water bottle in my other hand. And I something happened and I dropped my glass water bottle. And as it's falling, it's just like slow-mo. And I'm like, oh no, I lost the gun. If this shatters, I'm fucking done. And thank Jesus, it did not shatter. But she got so scared. Because she didn't know she was walking with her head turned, and all of a sudden she hears like this big like glass clang, and she like jumps, and I'm like, hey, that's how you get the gig, right? Like scare the crap out of the director. And maybe it made me memorable. So
yeah, maybe.
Tips to all you aspiring voice actors.
Throw your water bottles around.
Shatter your water bottles. Makes you super memorable.
What's the character's name? It's Hydrus too.
Hydrus, yeah.
Which makes me think of water. So is he water related? Yeah. I don't know much about Bakugan.
Aquas faction.
Oh.
So he's a water based.
He's blue based on the clip I found.
Yeah.
Which I was pretty excited when I stumbled across that on YouTube. I was just I was looking up I'm probably gonna start getting Bakugan in my in my algorithm search recommended videos. It's no, I'm not into it's more of a kid's show too, right? Like Pokemon-esque.
It's definitely more like preteen directed, which is nice because Top Wing is preschool.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, this is for
expanding the age range.
Exactly. Out of the preschool stuff. So that's sweet. And they also let me do a whole bunch of other characters on the show too.
Yeah, because it's dubbing, right?
Yeah.
That's the difference between at least this is all pre-animated and
it's all animated. You see it there.
Yeah.
On the two screens, and it's recorded like karaoke.
Mm-hmm.
You got your lines up on the screen. There's no. I
was gonna say, is there the line the hit line on the screen? It's because it's basically like ADR.
Yeah.
It's more ADR than Top Wing would be, where it's they're building everything around you. You actually have to tailor your performance.
That's why you get paid less.
Yeah,
is because their theory is you're not really bringing a creative element to this. You're filling in what we've already done, and you're like, it's actually kind of more work, but okay.
But I want to do an anime, so I'll take it.
Yeah. No questions about that. I'm doing it. I'll do as many characters as you want me to do.
Do you want to get into video games and stuff too? I know we had a conversation about this previously. Because especially now, video games are so much more mocap based.
Mm-hmm.
The voiceover actors are not just doing voiceover.
Yeah, they're doing everything.
They're full fucking performing. Yeah. And have you auditioned for that? I know a lot of that, at least in Canada, happens out of Montreal. But is that anything that ever gets dropped off down here or no?
I think in the 5 years I've been doing VO at this point, I've probably auditioned for 2, maybe 3 video games.
Yeah.
And I think one of them was a big Ubisoft game.
Yeah.
But most of them were even just Flash type games.
Which are making a weird big comeback. These indie developed side scrolling little games. What we were talking about on the phone the other night, because Johnny was recommending this Hollow Knight game,
right.
Which I don't think has any voice acting in it, but that's becoming even more of a market, which is again
nostalgia is a real thing, man.
Yeah.
A lot of people will do things just for nostalgia.
Mm.
It's probably the reason why I still watch anime, is because it reminds me of good times chilling in my parents' basement as a kid without any responsibilities.
No bills to pay.
Yeah, exactly.
Not having to worry about your next audition.
All that is equated with anime. So
we listen to usually most of the music we listen to our whole lives is what we got into in our like teens to 20s as well, because
Right.
like it just that resonated with us at a very like formative age basically, and that kind of helped turn us into who we are
For
down the
sure.
road. So now when you're starting out, I'm jumping all over the timeline here,
Mhm.
but we talked a little bit about money, and how, you know, the dubbing roles don't pay as much as the lead creative sort of first run voiceover acting, I guess.
Right.
Commercials are pretty lucrative if you stay in the non-union realm. So like
Even more lucrative in the union world.
well, yeah, like union commercials.
Yeah.
But they're so few and far between.
Yeah.
But how much does a potential voiceover actor make on like a union national spot? Like if it's
on a union national
like if it's
commercial?
going to air national across the country or even international.
Probably for like a year buyout.
Mhm.
You don't get royalties anymore. You get a buyout.
Yeah. You don't get
probably
royalties unless
looking
you can
at like
command them, right?
yeah, $2,000 to $3,000.
For a single session, basically, maybe
Yeah.
a callback to.
I think you get
tweak
paid
it.
even extra for the callback, not the full rate, but you might actually in the contract have to
Have like a revision clause
one
or
revision
something.
clause.
Yeah.
But $2,000-3,000 is usually for your union commercial gig.
Mm-hmm.
I've booked 2 of those
Mm-hmm.
in my career so far.
Union ones?
Yep.
When did you like? Are those more recent? I don't. We don't talk about your commercial stuff
Yeah,
as
yeah.
much. It's less,
Well, that's the
less-
thing. It's not as
it's less
exciting. You're like,
yeah.
because it's here today and gone tomorrow, and like you're like, oh, that was on TV. You're like,
Yeah. But I mean, those are like sweet gigs too, because it's low commitment and like granted few and far between.
Yeah.
But you get like a sweet paycheck for basically just going in and doing the job.
And if it's a big brand, it's like a really big brand to have on your resume.
Mhm.
And even though it was a one-off commercial, you're like, hey, I've worked for
McDonald's
or
or-
Budweiser,
yeah.
and you're like, oh wow, like this guy works for Budweiser. You're like, one time.
I did it once. It's okay. I've done that too on my website. There's some brands there that I did like through another company once, and it's like, yeah, but I did it. I did something for them.
Yeah,
That's it. That's
yeah.
all that matters. They trusted me once.
Hey man, you got to do what you got to do to promote yourself.
Was one of them that Staples ad,
Ooh, that was
or was that non?
that was non-union before
Okay.
I went.
Because I just remember like because I remember stumbling across that just by chance. I was on some agency's website.
Yeah,
and
that
I,
was so weird.
clicked this one Staples ad, and I'm like, that's Scott. And then I think I texted you, and you're like, yeah, they hired me, but then I think in the States or
they changed it.
They changed the voice actor for
They
a different
changed
market.
the actor and they refilmed some stuff. It was basically a guy, he filmed it
Yeah.
and then sold it.
Oh,
Like he wasn't hired by Staples for it.
oh,
He filmed it as a concept to sell to Staples,
interesting.
and then Staples bought it.
Oh, the first thing I ever hired you for was these corporate internal boring content where both of us were
Yep.
being vastly underpaid, but we didn't know about it because we were like 23 and
Yeah.
had no real idea what we were doing.
Nope.
So what are some going rates for like corporate and stuff? Because this was like, I think you were being paid per minute and
Yeah.
not enough, but
At the time, I think I just Google, man.
Yeah.
I was just Googling what I think, I talked about those pay to play websites, and they usually have like a chart breakdown of, what kind of work is it, and this is kind of how you're supposed to be paid for it. And I just used that as a guideline. But I think for anybody starting out, kind of the key words for negotiating rates is never, if they say, hey, send me your rate sheet, you go, what's your budget?
yeah.
And a lot of the time they'll show their cards and you go, oh,
Yeah.
sounds good.
The first person to say the number loses.
Exactly.
Because it's like you say like I'll do $25 a minute, and they're like, fucking right,
Mhm.
yeah, like
Got 'em.
Like I had $90 a minute like budgeted.
Yeah. And you're like,
yeah, and you have no idea. So.
Yeah.
And there's tons of different avenues for voice acting too, because you've got your cartoons and animated sort of narrative content.
Yeah.
You've got commercials, but there's also like documentary narrative and like corporate videos and stuff. Audiobooks, like
which are like, I bow down to people that do audiobooks, man.
that sounds like a lot of work.
So much work. Long form narrative is like just insane amount of work, and you got to keep yourself and the readers or listeners or whatever engaged.
Yeah.
Like, good luck.
Especially with our ever fleeting attention spans that we have now. Like dude, I watch videos on YouTube. Like if it's not a film or a short film or like something creative like that, if it's newsy type shows or podcasts, I listen to everything at 1.5 times speed. Cause yeah, dude, I'm really, oh yeah. Like I was watching like Seth Meyers or something the other night, and I'm watching him at 1.5 times speed because that's how little time I feel like I have.
I got to start doing with that with Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan's a good one to watch.
Like, cause they're
long episodes,
podcasts.
like 2.5 hours sometimes. But at 1.5 times speed, you can still get through it. So anyone who watches this, please watch it at 1.5 times speed. Save some of your time.
I love being sped up. That's the greatest feeling as a voice actor, is delivering it in the session and them going perfect, and then you hear it and they go, and you're like,
well, they had to squeeze
digitally sped up.
They had to squeeze 40 seconds of content into 26 seconds. So, what else are they going to do?
You could have asked me to read it faster.
Or they remove all the little spaces in between. So it's like at the end of those pharmaceutical commercials where it's I'm not even going to try.
Disclaimers.
Yeah, I'm not even going to try.
I was going to try it myself, and I'm like, nah.
I don't have anything. I don't have anything I can
give me
advise.
a script and maybe, but I got nothing to freestyle.
Should have done that.
When I go in for a session, I always read one in the pacing that we would like the spot to be.
Yeah.
And then I always give them like one reading it
fire
as fast as I can read it and still sound like pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And
because you do sound cool in those ones, man. You got your
Tonight at 9 on Showcase.
Dude, I still get stoked when I'm driving around and I hear your voice pop up. If I'm
the radio
listening to when I'm listening to The Edge or something and then you pop up, I'm just always like, yeah, it's Scott.
The radio ones are so sick because it's like you actually get to talk for like a long period of time. Most of the stuff at Showcase is like the bumpers where it's like Supergirl tonight at 9.
Yeah.
Like
the tag,
that's it. And then like occasionally I get like some fun stuff where you get to, do the movie trailer voice thing all the way through. And that's great. But the radio is like usually always you get to have, lines to the entire thing. And I don't know.
Well, because it's contextualizing the shit we can't see. Right. You're advertising a visual medium in a completely non-visual format. So like that must be kind of fun too. Because sometimes like Showcase commercials will come on and your voice won't actually be in it at all. Like, but I mean, on radio, it has to be. I enjoyed when you sent me that clip too of the Top Wing thing, because that was like 2 years after you booked it. I finally got to like see it.
Imagine my wait time. I'm like dying to see myself as this turkey guy, like killing me.
Commodore Smirk-Turksky.
Commodore, what's his name? Commodore Herky J. Smirk Turksky III is the official full.
That's what's on his long form birth certificate. So then what's next? What are you hoping? Like, is there anything you specifically want to book next? Like you've checked off anime as one of the things you want to do.
Yeah,
and obviously
that's a big bucket list.
You'd take more if it came down.
I'll take some more of that.
And you'll take what you can get. But is there anything like specific? Is there anything like that you would love to book?
A feature film.
Yeah.
An animated feature film.
Mm-hmm.
That would be amazing.
And like, would you take on anything? Like, I mean, obviously you would, but like, are you like a lead role type? I
would definitely be up for the challenge of a lead role. Personally, I find it's more fun to play the secondary characters.
Okay.
There's just a lot more freedom, and like personally, I love being like the crazy guy.
Okay.
And all the fun stuff and being the weird character. And most of the time, I would, if it's a lead, I would love to be the villain.
Oh.
If I could be the villain in like an animated
Disney
feature
movie or something,
that would be so cool. That would be so cool. There's just, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'd love to be a lead in your feature film, but it's not as fun because you're just reading it super straight most of the time.
So like the next Lion King thing, super CGI, would you be? Because I mean, I assume all the actors
they'll
are
have
also,
me.
Because I assume all the actors
protest.
are also doing all the like facial mocap action.
Probably,
too, right?
yeah.
Like to match their their voice and their sort of mannerisms and everything, because they're being
Right.
cast because all those people are actors, like in the new Lion King.
They're all famous.
None of them are just voice actors.
Right.
But do you get auditions for features too, or?
Yeah. I recently had a callback for a feature, which was I didn't book, but close, very close. It's reassuring and also like devastating to be like, oh my God, I'm so close.
So callback for a feature. I presume you can't talk about what it is.
No, I can't.
But like callback, you go into a studio and do it with somebody for that sort of callback.
Yeah.
But I mean, like at the same time, it's cool to get the callback.
Hey man, anytime, even for an audition,
Yeah.
anytime you have to look at a perspective, man. Like there's people that are like, hey, like you're doing it and you're booking, like how, there's got to be some tips or whatever. And you're like, you also have to look at it. Like when I started this, I was dying for any audition.
Mhm.
And the fact that now I get auditions on the regular and I'm getting callbacks, like that in itself is, a huge pat on the back that the director likes you enough to, spend studio money and time to bring you in to, show you off to the network executives and producers, being like, this is a guy who I think could be good for the role.
Yeah.
And you're like, that in itself, you have to, as shitty as it is not to book, you have to always just like, it's what we were talking about
Take the
before
silver
about
lining of,
like how do you keep yourself motivated with a 95% failure rate?
Mhm.
You have to be like, okay, well, like I'm still getting auditions, I'm getting callbacks still,
Mhm.
and like eventually you keep doing that, and you're gonna book another thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, every success is born out of multiple failures. And
if Oprah has taught us nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because I mean, you can take any major company or star, or they failed repeatedly and continue to fail repeatedly, I'm sure, before they hit that one sort of like big break or successful moment. And that goes with like any aspect of life. You're gonna fuck up way more than you're gonna succeed.
Yep.
And if you make a lot of mistakes, or you screw up, or you don't get the parts, or don't get to where you want to be, and then you succeed, it makes those successes that much more fucking like
valuable.
Yeah, you get stoked on them. So
and most of the time you don't learn much from your successes.
Yeah.
Like all your big successes, you're like awesome because you have hit the nail on the head of like, this is what they want, and you've delivered it. And you don't really learn. Sure, you like get some experience, and you like experience of this is what they want and how to deliver it. But it's not the same for every production. And that's can't remember what we were saying.
It's getting late. You're saying that you don't learn as much from your successes as you do from your failures. I do like the amount of like funding applications I've been rejected for. I got rejected from Sheridan, like from film school 3 times before I
can remember a few
accepted.
phone calls from you getting excited about some
like,
submissions that
didn't go anywhere. Like I like I'm working consistently, which is sweet. But I've definitely failed a lot more than I've succeeded when it comes to the like long-term career, like filmmaking goals and whatnot. Right. Like, but doesn't stop me from trying, because if you let it beat you down, then you're just never gonna succeed.
Somebody else is gonna do it.
Exactly.
Like somebody else is out there trying and failing, and they're gonna hit the success. Like if you're not there doing it, then they're happy about it because it's one less person to compete with. Yeah. I mean, I try also not to look at like other voice actors as like competition either, because it's like either you're right for the role or you're not. Yeah. Like, if this person is better for the role, then like they should have it. Like I don't want to be in something.
You don't harbor ill will against somebody for landing a
because
gig.
they brought a better fit.
Yeah.
Like just the way I would want to be respected for when I bring it to something and like land it, then you want that respect of like I brought the best, and they audition for this role, and so give me that money.
Yeah, and that's funny because like a lot of people picture actors with egos, but a lot of at least indie small time actors are totally understanding of like when they don't land the role and somebody else does. They're like, well, they brought something that I didn't, and that's shit happens. That's what you got to deal with, and let's move on and do the next one. Yeah. So there's a lot of like, I mean, egos can become a big thing in this business. But there is a lot of like humble people that just respect the craft of it and understand that, you know, there's no point in starting wars with people or letting your ego get the better of you, because all it does is it's just going to push people away more than anything. Like, so, yeah. Anyway, it's late. So
we ready to wrap this baby up?
I think we can wrap this up, but
we made it.
Yeah, we did it. Thanks, man.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Let's cheers some water.
Yeah, cheers some water. And then shoot the shit after, you know?
Yeah. Maybe play a little Rocket League if we can convince you.
If you can convince me. So thanks, dude.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you for checking out the inaugural episode of the J-Cut podcast. If you felt like you learned something, please consider hitting subscribe or the notification icon. It definitely helps us grow this channel and keep it sustainable. You can find full episodes of the J-Cut podcast on this YouTube channel or audio versions wherever you get your podcasts. At the time of release, we have 2 other episodes available and more coming weekly, so please consider checking out the second episode, now available, with DGC assistant film editor Sydney Cowper.
It's this, I use this phrase all the time, is I didn't know what I didn't know. And it drove me insane. And I would, try to apply for jobs and look at the job description. It must be comfortable and familiar with codecs and bit rates. And I was like, I might be, but I don't know if I'm not.